Hello everyone, and on behalf of the Victorian team of the Australian Institute of Architects, I'd like to offer you a warm welcome to tonight's presentation, eComply, the Future of Automated Planning. My name is Robin. I'm the events coordinator for the Vic chapter, and I'm pleased to welcome you tonight. I'd like to start just by acknowledging with deep respect the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we acknowledge that it's a privilege to stand on country, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And before we commence the presentation, I'd like to thank RMIT, who are our sponsor for this evening, and we'll be recording this event and it will be published on the Institute's YouTube channel. So please join me in welcoming Robert and Nancy to the stage tonight, and they'll speak to us about how to use eComply. Before we do that, we've actually got a few words from Vivian, who will also be welcoming you tonight.
Thanks, Robin, and hello, everyone. This is a 360-seat lecture theatre, so there's lots of space for you to spread out tonight. I'm Professor Vivian Mitsogianni. I'm the Dean of the School of Architecture and Urban Design at RMIT, and I would also like to acknowledge the people of the Woiwurrung and Bunurong language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nation, on whose unceded lands we conduct the work of the university, and respectfully acknowledge their ancestors and elders past, present and emerging. So we are currently in RMIT Building 80. This is the Swanson Academic Building designed by Lyons, the practice of our RMIT architecture professor, Carey Lyon. And it's actually home of the College of Business and Law. Our School of Architecture and Urban Design is just up the road in the building with all the discs, the RMIT Design Hub, designed by Sean Godsall Architects. RMIT Architecture is known for design. We're known for experimentation with new technologies and techniques. Our research also looks at cities as well as culture and society. And I was saying to Claudia just a few minutes ago, we're very proud that we received 100% or a perfect score in our accreditation last year. We've been doing a lot of work to be all-rounded, so we're very interested in experimentation, but also in building those ideas and their realisation out there in the world. We're also very open to to partnering with industry around research and development. So if you have any fantastic ideas, please feel free to get in touch. I won't keep you that much longer, except to say that we're delighted to host this event at RMIT tonight. My colleagues in VE, as well as the School of Property Construction and Project Management, tell me that they have done some beta testing on this software. I'm sure it's fantastic. So lots of connections there, and thank you all. Welcome to Robert and Anisi, I think.
Thanks for that, and thanks for RMIT and AA for hosting us tonight. Can you hear me fine? Okay, great. Well, that's the furthest person in the park there. So, what am I clicking to the next? The mouse, I'm assuming? Just the keyboard. Okay, cool. We do have a special guest. We do have Claudio Sanzaro from RMIT Design School, the TAFE department, that has actually used and is here today to explain his journey of using the platform for students and what he's gained from that experience. So I'm not sure, and that actually should be a question mark after the planning as well. It's not a statement, it's a question whether or not eComply could be the future of automated planning, and I'll go through the journey of what we have done and the reasons as to why we actually started to look at eComply. For those who don't know, I'm from Digital Development Victoria, and I play half of my role in Digital Twin Victoria. I have a commercial construction background, and the reason for me getting involved in eComply is I was getting sick and tired of there being a long delay in the planning process, and I thought there had to be a better way to improve the planning process. So that's the beginning of the journey for eComply from my point of view. And Archistar have got a different journey, but we've combined over the last year and a half or more. So that's not my slide, but here's an RMIT design slide for everyone. Move on. Yeah. Okay. Oh, here we are. That's moving.
They should be able to see the screen.
Okay. So we've already had a few acknowledgements of country, and I don't actually do the normal pitch here because I like to use this opportunity to leverage my understanding of what acknowledgement the country is, and try to work it into the presentation, so hopefully this works. So a bit of audience participation to start off. A question to the audience here. If you could just shout out 2 things that you can see that is similar in these 2 images. I wish I could have a prize for the first person to speak, but I don't. So anyone? Mountains? Yeah, that's a good one. I've heard that before. And sky, perfect. I have not heard blue mountains, but that's a really good one. Okay? Again. Polka dots. And one more. Lines. Yeah. I've presented this situation or these images to probably 35, 40 groups, and I haven't heard the answer that I was looking for. I do love blue mountains though, that's a really good one. How we see the world is how we present it. And generally, Indigenous art is done from a sitting position, looking from a sky view, looking down, versus a European image that's generally looked from a standing position, looking on a horizontal plane. And it's really important to understand where someone's coming from and how they see the world in order for you to understand how you can explain the world to them. And the world of the digital twin, which is part of what I'm representing today, as well as the Archiland product, is a new way of actually using different shapes and colours to then give a different way of explaining how the world may look. And so these images are different, but they're really trying to express the same thing. And that's how we, in the world of design, try to express how we can communicate to people on a landscape and in a sky view. And they're very important and very different, and they will be responsive and responded to by differently from different people. And this is kind of the context of what the digital twin starts to make us, opens up new doors to explain data in a whole different way. Every dot, every stroke that someone does is a piece of data, and how you overlay it can create a new image that you never saw before. Another question for you. This is, I think, 5000 BC is when the first civilization was, a European civilization was recorded. And we're at today. Which part of this line, of this timeline, do you think that we had moved from being a regional or agricultural community into an urban environment? At least 3 different people to say a number. Sorry? Last 100 years? Anyone else? That is 200 years ago? And the reason, it's a really basic calculation. It's a long, there wasn't actually, obviously it's very much sooner than most people typically answer that question to. And the reason why I put that up is we are expecting that the number is going to be 70-30 in 2050. Now, if every 1% of change took 140 years, and we're looking at changing it in every 2 years now, that's a dramatic shift. The last 50 years has obviously changed with technology, but it does, and I guess my point here is that we have to really start looking at things differently. We cannot do what we do the same way as we have for the last 50 years. It needs to change. And there's a dramatic change that needs to happen, and that's why we're focused on digital solutions. And hence the journey into eComply. Part of me, as I mentioned before, is I am DTV as well as DV, so a bit of a spill of Digital Twin Victoria. For those who don't know, it started about 3.5 years ago. It was funded about $32 million to start delivering a digital twin technology within Victoria. It had 7 programs that it needed to deliver. Some of it's related to environmental considerations, other is actually having a digital twin available to the public, and one of those streams is automated planning, which is what we're going to talk about today. But I always get the question about what is a digital twin, and I reckon it took me a long time to kind of get my head around it, and I heard so many different definitions. So I'm going to give you my basic understanding of what I understand a digital twin is, and hopefully clear some of the fog around it. But one of the key things for the property industry to understand is that digital twin has the potential to be as impactful to the property environment as the internet has been to commercial business. So I'm going to say that again, that the impact of the digital twin may be as equally impactful as the internet has been to normal business. And the clearest way, and I actually had tried DALL-E to design me this image, but I'm going to try to do this, and I actually didn't bring it because it wasn't as good as I hoped it was going to be. But imagine an urban environment that you see buildings, you see a lamppost, you see a car, you see a worm in the ground. Everything is now a filing cabinet. It's bigger if it's a building, it's smaller if it's a light post, and it's smaller if it's a worm. It doesn't matter, it's still a filing cabinet. That information, the structure of the information is really important in those filing cabinets. They're generally the same, like a Jewett system. And if it's the worm or if it's the building or the car, it's getting live data, and it's constant. Those filing cabinets are constantly being filled. And really, that's all a digital twin is. It's just a really structured system of data. And once you have that data in place, then you can start to overlay those machine learning and AI tools that allow you to start to automate and move forward in faster decision making. But there were 3 key ingredients that made the internet alive, and those 3 key ingredients are evolving to make the digital twin alive. And so we'll go through those to help you understand how close this technology is from hitting its stride. So the first thing for digital twin, so the internet, was access to data. I've never seen one of these modems before. I've certainly heard them, and most of the audience here might have heard them. Maybe half of them won't. Access to data now is in the cloud. It provides a whole vast volume of data at a great computational speed that we've never had before, and that's what was needed. The second thing was language. We needed to set a protocol of language, and HTML was the key language. Once we established that, we had a lot of people who could design websites. Once we had a lot of websites, we had people that wanted to design libraries like Netscape, and then the internet went bang. Same thing applies for digital twin, which is BIM, which is your world. So it's in some regards, the BIM is the HTML of the digital twin. And it's not perfectly a correlation, but it's very, very similar. And so the more BIM that we have in our environment, which is what you represent, the faster the digital twin will come alive. The third thing is decision making. And they call this the killer app in the internet, as everyone started to engage through email. And for me, that is just being able to collaborate much faster at speed and make decisions because you're able to collate a lot more information from different sources that you never had that access before. It took 3 or 4 days sometimes to get your drawings and couriers in the mail. You get these in minutes now. The tool that will probably start to get the digital twin to really start moving is the machine learning and AI, because you've got that structured data, which now those machine learning tools and AI can now work off. It doesn't need to get confused at what's going on. It can go and it can run wild. So once the structured data is in place, then machine learning and AI can start to get a bit more widely used. And that's hence, in some regards, where we are with eComply. It is effectively setting the structure of allowing, once that data is in place, that you can start putting these automated tools, and then you can start overlaying them with machine learning tools, and then eventually at some point AI. So I do have, there are a couple of videos that you're going to see, and I'm going to go through one. It won't be as flash, as exciting as Archistar's model, because I had to organise myself into a team meeting and record the team meeting to do this, because my organisation wouldn't give me a video app. So what you're seeing here is Archiland. This is a public accessible platform which Anisha will go through later on. And simply you get your design file in an IFC format, you load it up, and it goes through, reads the rules that you're, in this case it's a smaller housing code. It gives you on your right hand side, it gives you the actual rules from the system, and it gives you that context in 3D. And one of the key things that we wanted to do in developing this tool is it actually was clearly articulated as an educational tool. And of a building background, I also struggled reading building survey reports, and I got sick and tired of trying to get my head around it. So I wanted to see the information in 3D. So what this does is it highlights obviously green where it's approved, and this is looking at articulation in the built form. And previously you saw a red facade at the front, its setbacks were incorrect. And all we're doing really is checking mathematics at the end of the day. And here's an example of the envelope, and this is a bit of an older version, and as I said, you'll see a bit more flash with Anisis. And you can see the sections that are sticking out. And what Claudia will go through later on is how he's used this to inform students about not only how to use BIM modelling, but also how to learn about the planning rules. Because this is an interactive process. I do a design, I get instant feedback. I change my design, I get instant feedback. And I'll go through the process of how that improves the delivery or the supply chain information across the built form timelines. There is a section I just want to, I can't fast forward this, can I? Can I fast forward it? I can. This is an overlooking one. This is a really good one actually. So overlooking is always the first question I get asked when I go in these audiences. So now I've put it into the video so I don't get asked the question. Yes, it does do it. It does take into account the neighbours' habitable windows and private open space. But in this case, this section has been approved because you can obscure the glass. So the person's gone in their file and said the glass is obscured and therefore it passes. Now we'll fast track. So I'm going to go through a bit of a journey of, we did this as a test case. We've done a proof of concept and we've actually had a whole range of industry come to help us design this. This isn't done just by government and one single vendor. This has been built by industry. And what you see here is the sandpit to some extent, where we've had 6 different designers and builders come in, and they've plotted in their smaller housing code, and they've also plotted in a planning code that we designed. And that's, for me, the exciting component, because we've effectively designed a wind tunnel tester, and the examples of the product that you see of DV's design is the one that's coming up right now. We've actually built a wind tunnel tester that we can put a design out, we can see if the builders interpret it, we can see if they actually like what how the rules are working, and also get the building surveyors to come back to tell us the rules are good, they're clear, and there's no grey. And for those who are familiar with the smaller housing code, it's supposed to be black and white. It's not. We discovered through the coding process that there are some issues, and I'm probably up to now close to revision 13 in getting that information back to the VPA of clearing up some of the issues that they've got. So we've practiced on this sandpit, and I just wanted to show what I guess a suburban digital twin future may look like. You can imagine if that's an estate and you're a developer, that might be a situation where you might see one colour of a house being approved, another one that's being built, another one's being completed. So there's a kind of, I guess, 3 key things that this looks at. It does the building envelopes, as you saw. It does the site analysis regarding permeability of the parking as well. So it covers all the planning rules that we're supposed to look at, as well as the overlooking and site control. The key thing, again, is the BIM language. So we've discovered there's around 40% of the industry are generally okay in the BIM space, and it will be a critical mass, whether that's 60, 70, 80%. Once we hit that critical mass, then it won't be an issue of is there enough BIM people out there. But once we start to incorporate more BIM into the vernacular of the builders and designers out there, then we know that prefabrication will come faster as well. So I love this what if statements. Always ask what if. So there are 3 things that we tell people about. We should challenge ourselves as to what's possible and see why we can't do it and what is the outcome if we can achieve it. So in this case, If we codify the rules, then we can start to open up to the market and say, or to anyone, build us some software. We've got some structured rules in place, it's codified. Can you provide us some software that can help my design process? PDFs, they should be gone, but they're still here. But if we start doing a 3D model, we can start making them dynamic in the nature that we can start doing other analysis over them. And one classic example, and one that we're actually currently focused on as potentially delivery next, is the energy rating. Why can't I automate the energy rating process as well, and you get that information early on in the design process before you have to wait till the end? What benefit will that provide the design process? I don't know if it's possible, but we're certainly asking the question. And the last one, and probably one of the key selling points in getting people across this eComply within many corners of the industry, is that if we can have self-testing done, we're going to fast track the ability to assess. We can get house product out there sooner, which means it's going to be cheaper. And hopefully better quality, because you can focus your energies on the finer details. So this is an example of that. So the top line represents a typical smaller housing code product, which is actually smaller housing code design process. A smaller housing code is actually a very efficient house design as it already stands. So any savings it can be multiplied quite higher if it's a normal detached house. So you can see the house design process. There's a narrow, I wish I could can I point in this thing? I can. All right, so here's the house designer. They handed it to the building surveyor. They haven't had any direct feedback. The building surveyor waits, it's in their in tray, which is a common effect, and then they review it, and then they send it back. And this person sends the design through again, and they put it into their in tray, and et cetera, et cetera. We only heard that one building surveyor, and most of the building surveyors that we spoke to, who have had over 25 to 30 years experience, said that only in their lifetime have they ever had a drawing once that's been approved first run. Now, in the future, with the tool of eComply, if a designer went through eComply, they get their information back. They don't have to go to the building surveyor. They send it, the building surveyor's got some confidence. If they're confident with the platform, they review it, it goes straight out. There's no lag time in the in-tray area here. So we've assumed we've concluded from the conversation and the people that we had on board to test the platform that this saved between 2 to 4 weeks. For a normal detached house, we would say that this is close to 10, if not more, weeks. And that's a significant saving for developers, which hopefully gets fed onto the homeowner. I've had a lot of people from planning departments being really concerned and wanting to throw books at me as a result of this program and the concerns, and that's what generally happens in most of these. But my argument to them is it actually makes your life better, where you can focus more of your time on the things that matter to you. So here's an example of the SG stands for your statutory planning, the state requirements, and generally 70% of the rules are pretty standard throughout Victoria, and 27 are kind of 30 to 27 are focused on local government requirements. And I've just put ESD in there because that's a growing area of interest. If we can remove the statutory requirement checks, then we can focus more energy as a percentage on the things that matter to those, to the planners, and we're still saving time. And constantly we can reduce it more. So why can't we just automate all the statutory planning, because it's pretty black and white, or should be, and then focus our energies on the things that matter to us, but still have time saved to the end product. So in that regard, it gives them a bit more comfort. I won't go through these points. So eComply, it was a journey, and I'll go through some of the processes that we went through. It was a journey of about 2 years. We went out to market and engaged Archistar to do a proof of concept, and then moved on to the build-out product, which we engaged a whole range of industry partners to make sure that we were building it for them, not building it for the people in Crystal Towers. And what we have here is the date of release. So it's publicly available now to everyone. There's a variety of different platforms. One of them is the publicly accessible one, and then there's the commercial product that goes into a bit more, has a lot more offerings. Probably relevant to this crew, and I can see Ewan is in here. Hello. We are, the DTV team are delivering the BIM drafting guidelines. They also provide the 3D model assessment methodology and practice notes to give you insights at how the tool works. And we'll cover some of the quality assurance that we've undertaken to determine the accuracy, and it was an intense process, and it still is an intense process. So these documents will become publicly available in December. And so there'll be another, if this is of interest to you, please keep your eyes open to this document. So this is going a bit into the digital twin space. So it's a small housing code that we focused on. And you'd be surprised that we didn't actually have a lot of the information readily available to us about where is the smaller housing code, how many smaller housing code are there being used, how many is being built, how many is to be built. We're able to decipher that through some of the digital twin team's expertise to give insights, and remember of the imagery before of the Indigenous person looking down, how valuable is it to look from that perspective as well as it is to look from a horizontal perspective. So the journey, so just going through what it takes to actually have a government move to encourage the development of such things. So you can see that we started in Jan 2000, actually it was earlier than that, it was about September 2020. We had a whole bunch of agencies, the VPA and the VBA being two key ones, as well as the Department of Planning. Were involved. We went out and we had proved the concept built in a remarkable speed of time. It was a highly successful POC that proved that we could do this, build a solution. We did a roadmap with EY. We had, as part of the government process, of what does it look like, not just in 2 years, but what's it look like in 10 years' time. And I'll cover some of those points later on. And then Archistar was re-engaged as the partner to deliver the commercial products. And you can see the people that we've engaged in the process. For those who aren't aware, Metricon ABN Group are top-tier volume builders in Australia, probably two of the largest groups out there. And then Creation Homes and Henley are probably the next tier. And then we've had some, and Scribaki and Code Architecture, sole practices architectural groups that we wanted to get on board as well to understand how they felt about using the platform. So we went through a process that they designed the product, they put it through, and they told us what worked for them and what didn't, and the Archistar team then adjusted the program to suit. We also had building surveyors. Building surveyors are absolutely key to this, also to check to make sure that the machine was providing the results, that they also were giving the results as well, so they needed to match up. And then we're probably at the pink stage at the end there, as you can see, and we're looking at now what does Horizon 2 look like. The product is out, it's been managed by Archistar, but we're looking at the next phase and saying, okay, if this works in the planning process, what's the next thing that we need to focus on? And there's a couple of projects that we're circling at the moment. I think one of the things I like to point out here is this number. And I reckon it was more than that. It's 14,000 manual checks I reckon we've collectively done to make sure this program is accurate as it needed to be. And we're still checking. It doesn't stop. And it's all fair and well to say automation here, it's amazing, it does all these things, but it takes so much human effort to make sure that you're comfortable with it. The building surveyors said that they would not use this until it's 100% accurate. The builder said 90%, but the building surveyors said 100, and the building surveyors don't get 100% themselves. So that you have to really push the case, and we're committed to trying to get to that point. So that's important to show the journey, and I will come back, and Nixie's going to do the practical and give you a bit of a story about Archistar, and then we'll also get Claudia to come in and give you insights. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Rob. Hi everyone, my name is Anisi. I am from Archistar. So who is Archistar? If you haven't heard of us before. So my background, firstly, my background's in architecture. So we're originally from Sydney, started up, but we're, firstly started off here coming with eComply, with Development Victoria, moving into Melbourne and here, but I'm also expanding out globally, which is super exciting. So it's been an exciting process so far. But as an architect, it's really exciting to see these tools being put into the hands of students and the industry, and building up from that point. So where we started, just a quick spiel about Archistar. If you haven't heard of us, we're a property technology company, and pretty much we create tools that help people streamline that property process. Starting off from the initial design phase all the way to, to the end process where you can actually start building as well. So we started off initially as an education platform, and we still are running that. So it's an online e-learning academy. It has practical skills for everything to do with digitized, architecture and design, building, construction, and so on. So that's, still kicking on, and that's used in, a lot of universities globally, which is really great. And that's all about creating skills, so creating tools, and using these skills to speed up that initial design process and to get you all the way from designing a building from scratch all the way down to the end construction line. So we started off with that, and then we started saying, okay, well, we're creating these tools, we should commercialize some of them, get them from the hands of not just the experts in tech, but also to your everyday people, even your mums and dads if they want to start using it. So that's where we started off with Archistar and creating these types of tools, and this is where we come into Archistar Property, and pretty much what this helps do, and I'll go through these in a little bit of detail, but we help people find and assess their next development site really quickly, gather all this data together, and help people find their next development very quickly in under 10 minutes. From there, we can generate a building design according to all your local parameters, pop that up within seconds, and not just one design, but hundreds of designs to see that up and running. And what I'm going to show through today mainly is a comply part of our company. And this is where we've been working over the last number of years with Development Victoria and DTV. And pretty much what it does, like Rob showed you, is take a building design and say, am I compliant or am I not compliant against my local planning code? And this is kind of where we're moving very heavily into. And the final one, which I won't go in today, but it's all about visualization. So visualizing a building, a lot about community engagement, things like virtual walkthroughs, and so on. So I'll go through quickly, but the main aim of everything we do at Archistar is to shift the way that we're working with AI and residential design, and shift the way of working so that we do all the hard work at the beginning of the process to make all the tough decisions, things to do with compliance. Is my building facing the right direction? Am I getting my 60, 70, 80% sunlight, ventilation, all that sort of stuff, before you get too far into the construction process. So make the mistakes early on, fix those errors early on, and then, use your time and money more wisely as you go through that construction and design process. So in terms of our find and assess part of what we do, pretty much we can pinpoint very quickly or instantly hot sites in an area, which ones are available for, for example, if I want to build a duplex, where can I build a duplex very quickly? Or if I want to build a set of apartments, what can I build on there? And within 5-10 minutes, you can know if this site is feasible or it's not feasible for what I want. So it's being able to utilize data that's out there already from a number of partners, people like CoreLogic and government data points, flood, heritage, all that sort of stuff, and understand very quickly what's happening in that area. Is it feasible for me or is it not? Things like this, where we take in for the whole of Australia and globally as well, we're expanding out, but taking in planning rules. So for each individual site that you click on in the map, you can understand quickly, okay, for this one, for example, it has on here, I don't know if you can see my thing, but it has on the top there, a tick or a cross. I can build a house here, I can't build duplexes, townhouses, I can't build industrial on this site. I can build 6 apartments, I can build 3 townhouses and so on, without having to do any work at all. We just kind of click on a site and we collect that data, run some analytics on it and provide information straight in your hands from there. And as you go within each one, we've digitized the whole planning rules for whole of Australia, and we can start now calculating this information as well. So as you go in, you click on a site, you can say, okay, to get the minimal communal open space for this site, I know that, for example, I need to know it needs to be either a maximum of 40 meters squared, or it needs to be, it needs to be 5% of the lot area. We know the lot area straight off the bat. We can calculate that for the whole of Australia. You go click on a site, we can tell you you need 40% communal open space for this one. So it's being able to put that information directly in your hands right at the beginning, rather than architects, planners having to go through and say, okay, I'm going to go through this 1,000-page PDF and pinpoint exactly what I need. We kind of just put that in one space really clearly for you to see. And that kind of brings it back to having that information in your hands right at the beginning and speeding up that initial design process. At the same time, we can take this information and start saying, okay, look, you're looking for this type of site. In your area, 500 meters away from you, 3 kilometers away from you, here's 12 other sites that match that criteria. So if you want to really quickly see what you want to, this is what I'm roughly looking for, we can show you very quickly using that data. This is, also in the area, very similar sites that we're looking at here. And, like I mentioned earlier, we have these things called residential hotspots, and it pretty much just pre-processes data that we have available to us. And we can just start using that information to make really easy opportunities for you to come in and have a look at. Where can I build detached duplexes on here, attached duplexes, housing, and so on. On top of this as well, we can start integrating it with industrial partners, things like, I can build here, but is it for sale? We can start popping up sites, that aren't for sale, that sort of thing there. So it's all about kind of using that information, using that data, and bringing out more useful information for users. So if you've found a site that you want to build on, we can quickly populate up designs on there, things like duplexes, start visually showing in 3D. For example, this is the building envelope that you can build to. We look at the local planning code, populate that envelope and say, okay, this is what you can build within. Here's a bunch of house designs that fit within it, and so on. So you can kind of get a visual idea about what you're doing. Rob mentioned earlier that, a lot of people, they design in 2D flat. You can't really understand what's happening most of the time, especially if you're not from an architecture background. Your everyday person can't look at a plan or won't really know how to look at a plan and say, yes, that's a great living room space. Once you start getting into 3D and getting into these really nice kind of formats and seeing what you can and you can't build on a site, that's where the true value of these kind of tools come in. And even looking at this, what can you build, what can't you build on a site? And this is kind of where it leads to how we came into the compliance space on here. So you can use tools, for example, as well to look at things like terrain. How much, if I build this house on my site, how much will I have to cut, how much will I have to fill in that terrain? And even start getting, monetary value out of that. So you can understand as well here, for example, better planning decisions. If I raise my building, I'm going to save this amount of money. If I pull it down into a basement, this is how much it's going to cost roughly to excavate and do that sort of thing there. So from there, we can generate building designs based off the planning codes, things like duplexes, housing, apartments, and we can go to all of the different local planning code, taking those parameters and generate not one building, but hundreds or even thousands of buildings, depending on how big the site is. These are not meant to be your final construction drawings, but it's meant to very quickly help you understand how, what you can build. Is this worth my time even looking into this in the first place? And if it is, which orientation suits me best, and kind of speed up that initial process. And from here, for each one of these designs, you can get, I got 30 dwellings out of this. My FSR is, 2:1. I got 40% ventilation. My ground floor area is this, and so on. And you can kind of get all this information pulled out really quickly to speed up that process. And then from there, you can say, okay, look, this building's going to work in this direction, this layout, and kind of take that from there and go for gold and spend time on the really important things like your look and feel and spaces and all that sort of stuff. Stuff that makes buildings great. So from there, this is how we moved into our compliance part of our company. And this is kind of where, as well, very similar timing, that Rob came in with his great ideas there. So pretty much what we're happening here, I'm not going to go through a lot of this in detail. I've got a video that we'll play now maybe, but I'm not going to go too much detail. Rob did go through this a lot, but what we've developed up in 2D and 3D is you can come in, you can build your house design in ArchiCAD and Revit, whatever you're working with, and you can say, okay, look, am I going to pass, am I going to fail against all these different courses? And we've started off with a smaller housing code, but it can expand out to a number of different codes. We're starting here with architecture and building design, but it can work with things like structure, with other things as well, as long as you kind of have geometry to assess against and a planning code that is that's fairly straightforward, that you can digitize and work with. These sort of tools work. And being able to kind of go through and say, okay, great, this is the setback that I need to sit within. it's not working, you know, I'm out of my setback by 200 mils over here. And you just go straight to that point and you adjust it, you know, and you retest it again. So rather than having to wait, you know, 2 weeks or 5 weeks even for your building surveyor to come back with that information and be like, hey, you know, you're 95% correct, but here's 3 different places that you need to go. You quickly make that change. It might be a day that you make the change in, it might be a week, whatever it is there. But then you have to start that process again, and that's super, you know, that's a really long process, especially if you have to come back, say, for example, 5 times to do this. You could be waiting up to half a year until you get a compliant design. If you go in straight away with a building that you know is, you know, even 95% compliant or 98% compliant, and that will speed up your process immensely right at the beginning before you even start at all. So at the end of it, what you're getting is higher quality building designs. And you know, you're saving their time, you're saving your time, and the money associated with that as well. So there's a lot kind of going on in that space. A few kind of numbers, we did a lot of research going into this, and you know, we've done what does it take to perform this type of digital transformation in the industry. And you know, right now, what we're currently seeing, sourced, you know, from different sources in Victoria, but right now, 60% of applications received, they're missing information. So this is not even being compliant or not compliant, they're actually just missing information. So that gets sent back already. You know, you're missing, you know, this elevation, or you're missing this diagram, blah, 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 that sort of stuff. If you can come in knowing that you have all the information you need straight off the bat, you know, already that saves a lot of 60% of the designs already going in. Each design that goes in is roughly sent back between 2 and 5 times. Each time. So, you know, and in between that, there's between 2 and 5 weeks wait each time you submit in. So you're already saving, you know, up to 20 to 25 weeks in some cases on those ones. To get a design process, it takes roughly 15 to 20 weeks to get that, you know, a design through the line and approved. And on that, there's a statutory days that are, you know, you're meant to be getting these passed, a maximum of 60 days. So you're already quite over it, over that number. So there's work to do here, and you know, like Rob said, you can't fix these issues if you just keep going the same way you're going currently. So there's, you know, it requires change to do this. Workflows, using CAD and not even using BIM alone, so just using 2D design, not 3D. It takes roughly 21 to 24 weeks to get a design approved. Once you start getting to 3D, without a tool like eComply, it can take up to 22 to 26 weeks. If you use a tool like eComply to get an approval, you can shrink it down by 80 to 90% and shrink that down to, you know, 1 to 6 weeks. We had, like Rob mentioned, we had 6 different building companies come on board to test out the platform. The first time one of the builders, the architect, was doing this, it took him roughly 9 days to get his first compliant design. The second time he did it in under a week. The third time he did it in a day to get from a first design to fully compliant. So, you know, the more you start using these sort of tools, the faster you become at it. It becomes like second nature, which is, you know, really exciting to, you know, once you see these kind of numbers and how quick you can start processing it through. And then there's economic benefits from that as well. I won't go too much into this, but, you know, for a small housing code home, you can save up to 11 grand per dwelling. If you're looking at res code, you can save up to nearly 40 grand per dwelling. And on top of that, that's just, you know, lower project costs, that's just for that, but there's faster application times, processing, you know, up to $350 saved per application. And then of course the holding costs of the land as well, you know, saving costs on land purchase. So, you know, there are quite some significant economic benefits from using tools like this. And in terms of, you know, costing and how you're going to get a return, by using a tool like eComply, it only takes one project to get a return on what you're, you know, on using a program like this. So, you know, if you're a developer going in and you're doing hundreds of these homes, it only takes one home to recover the cost in terms of, you know, and that cost comes from things like actually installing Revit or, you know, like actually buying these subscriptions as well. So it's quite a significant, you know, saving that you're looking at. You know, res code, you can see the numbers up there, but it's relatively low cost in the larger scheme of things, especially if you're using this as an ongoing project. Okay, so I'm going to go through and do a bit of a live demo of this. I don't usually do live demos. It's like I really hate it. So everything could go wrong at all times. But what I'm going to do is we're going to go a bit interactive. You can all jump on for free. So if anyone wants to jump on now, you can go to archiland.archistar.ai. We have a free version of this platform up and running. We actually have it implemented at RMIT TAFE, which Claudia will be going on through in a minute once I do this demo. But this is it's really exciting. So like I said at the beginning, at Archistar, we want to bring these tools to the public, at the minimal cost that we can, so that not just the experienced technical users can use it, but anyone can jump on board and start using it. So you're welcome to log in now, and pretty much what we can do is I'll teach you a bit about how it works, how to use it. You can go in, download a free free sample files, upload, check it out, and in your own time you can go and design something and check it out for yourself. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my computer now, just make sure my internet is working, and I'll just show you very quickly about how it kind of works and how I can do this. So let's swap. There we go. All right, great. So what we're looking at here is the free version of Archiland, is what we're calling it. And if you zoom in, pretty much what happens is you can see a bunch of houses that we've just generated that work with the smaller housing code. And from here, there's a bunch of different sites you can look at on the left, all the different lots you can go into. On the right-hand side, there's a bunch of different layers. You can look at things like near map, see what's live under the ground. Underneath you, you can see what zoning you're in, see 3D buildings on the site, contours, maximum building heights, all kind of information that's relevant to all different planning codes. You see flooding layers and so on. So you can see all the information around the site through there, what's heritage, what's not heritage, and so on. But what I want to show you today is if I was to upload to a lot on here, what it looks like. So I've gone ahead and uploaded a first design. On here, this is a design we've created in Revit. And pretty much what that design looks like is, if I open this up, I've put some elements in there that fail. So this one here, that's not the one. None of those is the one I want. That's okay. So pretty much what happens here is, I have a design that I've put in here. On the left-hand side here, we have all the different information, clause by clause, whether you've passed, whether you've failed on here. And if I go over here, and I look into it, I can see, for example, here, my front wall is passing. This is great. This is the reason why it's passing. It doesn't exceed the setback. It's meant to be set back, at a maximum of 4.5 meters. This one's at 3.09 meters. It measures the exact distance. I know that I'm fine. I'm green. It's good. If I go back and I see some of the ones that aren't compliant, for example, this one, my left wall here is actually protruding through the envelope. It's too close to the edge of my site. So what I'm going to do, I have it open here in Revit. This is a file that was breaking before. And I'm going to move this wall back in a meter. So for example, if I move it back 1 meter. Okay. Oops, I moved it the wrong way. Sorry. This is why I don't like doing live demos. Okay. One more time. Yeah. There we go. There we go, that'll do it. Okay, so I've moved it back in. Pretty much all I have to do now is export it. I've already got my settings in place. I've done it a number of times before. I'm going to export that. I'm going to replace the file. I'll do a separate file. I'm going to export that. It takes about 10 seconds to export. In the meantime, that's done. I've changed it. I'm going to go back in here, press back again. I'm going to upload a new submission. And if I go into here, I'm going to find that design. I'm going to upload that design in there. Hopefully it doesn't take too long on my phone internet. But in general, it takes about 30 seconds to a minute to take this through, depending on how fast your internet is, how big your file is. This is a fairly complex design. It'll probably take about a minute to get in there. But what it does, firstly, before it even gets into any of the analytics, it starts validating the file. So it says, okay, You know, have you got all the right information? Have you got walls? Have you got floors? Have you got doors? All that sort of stuff in there. I have a feeling it's going to take a while on my phone. And then pretty much once it validates, it says, okay, look, this is a proper file. You have all the right elements in there. And then it starts to upload. And from there, pretty much, you know, you wait about a minute and it starts popping up with the right information in there. And I guess the benefit of having that clause by clause, you know, you can pinpoint exactly where where you're not compliant. So you kind of go in and say, okay, look, that wall's wrong. I'm going to move that wall. I'm going to change it exactly like I did there. Put it back in and see if that's compliant now. And, you know, if you were to do that in real life, that might take, you know, once you actually submit it, it might take 2 weeks, might take more. Here we've done it. I changed that in about 10 seconds. I've uploaded that back, and about, you know, in under 5 minutes, we've got feedback on whether that's now compliant or it's not compliant there. So, you know, it's really big. Like this is like, it's going to make a big change in the industry once we start implementing this sort of stuff. That's gone and been analysed there. My wall's now moved. I'm going to open up that assessment. Clause 7 is now passed, and you can see there it's now green. So it's literally as simple as that to do. There is a bit of work in the beginning to put the parameters in. You know, the right parameters. This is the walls, my front door, this is my lounge room, that sort of thing. But once that's in there, iterating is as simple as that, which is, you know, it's really great. So yeah, that's kind of probably it from my end. We've been expanding this out globally, so it's not just used now in Victoria here, but, you know, New South Wales has taken it on. We're expanding out into the US, into Canada. You know, the city of Burlington's got a production version of this underway, and you know, they've got a number of cities and over there working that up there. So it's super exciting to see that, you know, it's not an issue that's just affecting us, you know, in Australia, but it's actually a global issue. And as we talk to all different councils and cities around the world, they're having the exact same issues as we're having here. So, you know, it's something that we're going to have to deal with on a global scale, and everyone is looking to technology now as a fix to this, because there aren't that as many planners, there's not as many, you know, building surveyors coming through to speed this process up, and you can't keep going in the current trajectory if it's not working for us as it is. So, you know, bringing these sort of tools, it's really great. Victoria was at the absolute forefront of this, you know, so it's really exciting to come on this journey, you know, with you guys to bring this to the world. So, really exciting. It has now been implemented in RMIT TAFE. Claudio is heading it up, so I'm going to pass over to him to show you a bit of how, you know, students have started using this and how their work is going. So, you know, thanks, Claudio.
Thanks, Anisi. I don't know how I can follow that. So well said and demonstrated. I'm just speaking from the student's perspective. Is that the right slide? On the keyboard? Yep. That's back. Keep going? No, I haven't seen that one. Anyway, I'll flick through and see how I go. I'm just going to speak about the learner's experience and what my experience is. My background is I'm a building designer with sole practitioner, so I've got sort of 1 foot in residential design and 1 foot in commercial. I'm also the digital applications coordinator at RMIT in the building design advanced diploma of building design. And my specialty is workflows, BIM. So I was very excited when this came out, and they were good enough to show me, and then I had to try and get my head around it myself. And Revit's my specialty, so I was sort of teaching it from the Revit perspective. And when I started seeing the speed, time, workflow, just click through until I recognise a couple of slides. Other way. Up or down. That's yours. I'm going the wrong way. Am I going the right way now? Down, down, down. That's something I recognise. Yeah, when in the classroom teaching the eComply software and introducing in our workflow from sketches, my students have done their legislation and res codes, but like everyone who remembers it all, and they get caught. And I've seen it in the industry taking 2 years to get a design over the line, and the speed of this is very attractive. Okay, so my students in their first year, I think I brought in a little bit too early. They'd only had Revit skills. They went from AutoCAD 6 months and then some Revit skills for 6 weeks, and I brought it in. So it was a lot of dynamics happening there, learning the software, Revit, and learning this. But a lot of them embraced it, and they could see, especially the mature ones who might have a foot in the industry, saw the potential of this, and their employers saw the potential in it as well. But they would come up with a design. First I got them to do the course. There's a 2-hour course in the academy to familiarise yourself with the process, IFC files. My students had never heard of IFC files, so it was good an opportunity to introduce that and the compatibility with other software, exchanging these IFC files. But once we brought it into Revit and they started modelling, they really embraced it. I got them to do the training first, and then I got them to start following what I set up in Canvas, and I think a few of us would know what Canvas or Blackboard is all about. But I got them to follow the instructions that Anisi was good enough to scratch up for me. And it gave them the site to log into, trying to make it as easy as I can, the site to log into, some videos to watch. I demonstrated in the classroom, it took a few goes for students and myself, but after a while, I gave a few options. I'm primarily staying in Revit, and we just kept moving forward. And now, like I said, a lot of them embraced it and they were prepared to go the full extreme. They were very busy. We had a few other projects going as well. But as they started going down, they downloaded a template as Anisi was good enough to demonstrate. And then we moved through designing, the tutorials, some videos I prepared, and we just started moving through. They saw the potential and we got a variety of outcomes. They designed, we kept it very simple, as you see by the imagery at the top. They did the research. This was very interesting, along with their learning in legislation. Some of it they forgot, some of this prompted them, and they could sit there and start resolving and learning at the same time, which was very beneficial. They came up with some reasonable designs. Some almost complied, some did. And all the lessons learnt in the end. But I think it's a valuable tool. It opens up the learning. They enjoyed it, as you saw in Isi's demonstration. And they were learning BIM and learning res codes and codes and offsets and planning. After a while, I can see the benefits of this, of cutting down the time and saving money, and with the costs of the industry going skyrocketing, materials, time, labour, this is going to be a win-win-win. That's all I can say. But at the end of the day, my students saw the value, they commented, they made some good points that I passed on, and I feel we went on a journey. The only change I'd make is probably put it a little bit later in the program, probably my second year. Advanced Diploma runs for 2 years, and in the first year, I think the students are learning a lot of different software, SketchUp, Rhino, Revit, and they have more tools probably in the second year. So that's probably where I'm going to aim to place it and run it again next semester. That's about all I can say at the moment. Thank you.
Just to reiterate, Claudio came into this, we offered him the opportunity to do a pilot. We wanted to really test to see if it was actually going to be a faster journey for someone to learn through this process. And we don't have empirical data, but subjectively, would you say that the journey of a student learning both BIM modelling as well as smaller housing code planning has improved as a result of the program? And we'd love to do some empirical data testing in due course. And that was the kind of hypotheses that we had. So I'm going to just wrap it up with a couple of more extra slides. The key thing here is going back to the very first kind of a couple of slides that I had that talked about the reason for change and why we need to change. As much as this is a technology kind of project, it really is about change management, and it's change management on a cultural perspective. And the architects are actually at the forefront of being the vocal people out there to help the industry change quicker. And I'm going to go through some of the learning journeys that we had, because this is one solution. There's so many more that we need to build, and the members of AIA should also be part of that journey, I'm hoping, as well as the PIA and UDA and all the other members within the property industry. But some key things that I wanted to share before I wrapped up, and it's about how do we actually get the old dog to learn new tricks? That was the idea, but that's not an old dog, that looks pretty young. Okay, that's the same as I see here. So the first lesson we discovered is that there's a lot of focus on tier ones, and that's where there's a lot of expertise, but it's not those we needed to focus on, it was class ones. Why is it that I have this weird red box in front of me? You get that as well? Anyway, that's why you're looking up at the screen all the time. So that was the area that we wanted to make it. This is complicated. That's less complicated. We wanted to test the journey of digitalising class ones and then take lessons from there and go into this space. But it's also about raising all the skill sets of the industry, because half the stock or more of the stock is out in class one homes out in the suburbs. So how can we get them engaged, that industry members, to improve and go into that BIM world? And it's less back end and more front end. And the reason why I say that is digital twin. Everyone's talking about digital twin. It's great for facility management. It's really hard to sell someone the benefits of 30 years in the future when you can't really actually work out what you're going to spend in the first place. So we all talk about facility management, and everyone goes and falls asleep when they talk about facilities management, because unless you're a facility management expert, it's not my cup of tea. I actually find it quite boring. It's important, but we said we need to work, and there was a graph that Anisi had about all the benefits at the front end of the project, and that's what we're focusing on. Why can't we design digital twin tools that give us information early so we can design the best things possible? So one of the things that we need for builders, and you might say they're all hung after money, and yes they are, if they don't have money they don't survive. So how can we improve? And the story about for them to get engaged is we want to give them the carrots. What's the carrot that we're going to get to them to engage into these tools that make them jump across to use BIM? And you saw some numbers before of some of the savings that could be obtained if they started to move in that digital field. And that message is really important about it actually is maybe it's a bit of a jump. For some it's bigger than others, but there are benefits at the end of the line if you start this journey. And at some point you'll have no choice, but get in early. And this one might be a bit offensive to this audience, but I'll stand by it. It's less about the architect in this instance as the submitter, and it's more about the reviewer. And the reason why I say that is a basic fact. The building surveyors, who are incredibly important, who are accountable, planners are not accountable, but building surveyors are. There's been a net decrease of building surveyors in Victoria, probably across Australia, since 2012. There's more regulation that they have to check. Only about 500 of those are actually practicing, because the other 200 are waiting for their insurance to dry out after 10 years so they can retire. They're under a lot of stress, and they keep getting more things to check. They should be out on site checking the product to make sure that it's built properly. So that's unfortunately, that is our focus, but it doesn't mean that tool doesn't help the way that you design. So helping them actually helps the design process as well. And the big one is the BIM jump. We didn't really know at the beginning of this process of what are the skills that you need, how do we structure the files, what are the things that the architects and the builders need to understand, and how big is the jump? Because it's bigger for some groups than it is for others. So how do we work out what that is? And so I don't know, I got that there. So these are some of the recent facts from previously. So 40% of the builders got BIM, so we know there's a big jump that we need to encourage people. So having a chat to Claudio's team and say, how do we get people to come on board to see early on in their learning process about what the value is of learning BIM? Because if you use BIM, all these automation tools, today it's planning, tomorrow it may be energy, the next month it might be in building code, and then it can continue. So once you're in it, you've got a better chance of utilising these tools going forward. So I'm assuming 85%, that's just a number that I've pushed out. So then I'm just going to kind of touch on Claudio's experience. It's about the gamification process. Imagine if that tool that you saw that Anisi and Claudio showed you as a lecturer, you could, or as a student, you would have 10 weeks to build a compliant home, and you actually saw your neighbour's house being built or your neighbour's student's house being built at the same time, and you could see how fast they were going. And the amazing amount of information that you could start to collect as a lecturer starts to evolve to information that you've never seen before. And I'm going to give you an example of that. So that's the street that you could be as a student, competing against other students, because competition's a good thing sometimes. And this might be the platform that you get as a teacher of how your students are going. So you've got the student on the left-hand side, so student 1 to 8. You're now clear about how many times they've submitted, and as well as how many minutes they've been active in the system, so you know that which ones are really engaged and which one isn't, so you can focus on who to speak to. I've got an example here. You don't have to worry about student 8 because they're passed, so now you can focus on only 7 people. And number 5 seems to be the lowest, and they're only 12% correct. 12% of the rules are approved. So I need to focus as a lecturer. I need to focus on them. This information wouldn't be provided in the past, but now it is. So the lecturers can spend their time specifically on the areas that needs help, and offer their other spare time to do other things. In this example, these are the clauses. And I can see as a lecturer that clause 4.1 is the one that's getting the most fails. So why? So let's hone down and let's make a class about 4.1. And then the last bit here is this is the information that's not supplied correctly. So something they're not writing in the BIM information is not correct. So that's related to a planning rule. That's related to a BIM understanding. So again, honing down. So this is just an example of once you've got that information. If I go back to the whole point about digital twin being data, I can make more improved decisions going forward. And that might be if you're a developer and you've got 5 designers and they're also failing somewhere, then you can kind of work out, well, let's make this more efficient by focusing on that one particular issue. So, I mean, maybe this might be what other automatable tools are on the horizon. I've already spoken about a couple. Energy is probably one of them. Move that. All right, so one last kind of closing statement and I guess going in and talking more about the future. So the challenges, I really need this red box out of the way. How does it go? Doesn't go. No, all right, it's just there. All right, well, that's, you're going to get my back then. The key challenge is the cultural change. Maybe if I open this one. No, it's yours. No? All right. I'll just leave it. All right. So maturity of the whole industry is a key one. Understanding how do we start moving across, and the RMIT institutes and the like are very important. And understanding, you've got to get people to understand that there's a leap of faith, but hopefully some of these tools and information that we showed today shows that.
All the way over. Oh.
Oh.
I thought you were talking about that one.
Yeah, no. Yeah. All right. This is great. Almost finished, but it's. So, I mean, there's always the challenge, and I've had multiple people be upset about what this might mean for their future and their work. And yes, it will change some work, and it will potentially remove some roles. But like everything in technology, it's redirecting them to the areas that creates the most amount of value. And I use the building surveyor. Let's get them out on site and check their built form. That's really important to do that. And I had challenges, but energy surveyors, accredited energy raters, complaining that if you automate my process, then I can't do my job. And again, well, I reckon you should be out on site checking to make sure all the taping around windows is done correctly and making sure the windows. I'll give you an example of where this may go, actually. Maybe that's the next question. Yeah, so looking at new skills, and so one of the examples of the energy tool, so if you're designing a house and you're wanting to get to 7.5 or maybe 8 stars, and you look at your windows, you may select a particular window. In the future, that window might be out of a database, a central database, that all the window types are in. You will select the window, or you will ask the machine to say, I want 8 stars, I want you to select the windows to get me to 8 stars. And it does that. So you've done everything else, but the windows are the last thing. So it selects the windows, and you've got, let's say it's wooden windows, double glazed. So I can then approve the energy rating report. It can be digitally stamped, and that goes in with the building permit. Then, in the time that the building occurs and the building surveyor is going through, I can guarantee you that most building surveyors will never check the window types for your buildings to make sure that those really expensive windows that you're supposed to put in there that are highly rated are actually not in, it's something else. And I'm not saying that happens a lot. I'm saying the possibility of that happening is there, and it probably does happen. So what will happen now in the future, what these tools will enable, is that you will have that product stamped on the building certificate. The manufacturer will know that it's been approved. If the building permit is issued and construction will start in the digital twin, they'll be notified that the building is being built. They can schedule their program of windows, and this is not out of the reach. This is very plausible. They can then potentially even make a phone call, so the customer relationship between the manufacturer and the builder is now improved. They can get the windows and make sure that they're available on time, and then they could have radio chips in there that the building surveyor just has to walk through the building, and it will automatically highlight that the window frame is the same window frame that's registered on the energy certificate. That is completely plausible and possible, and it's not far away. And that means that we're going to get better quality building. And you need to start off with these types of programs to be able to get to that point. And so that might mean that the advancements of skills in that environment is, well, how do we start making sure that that kind of scheduling or programming with the manufacturers is going to be much more a much flower system. It's all about that supply chain and making sure it's smoother. So that's a lot of talking to you. So I'd like to thank that you've been here for 1.5 hours, almost, and my co-speakers as well. So thanks, everyone. Unless there's going to be questions as well. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Oh, there's a couple. I reckon we'll be able to hear them.
Okay, that's fine. I was just going to give you a microphone. Yep.
Hello? Yep, so just wondering about like the whole process of design and planning and construction in general. Like we found that I guess the highest cost to the client at the early stages of the planning process would be land survey information. Just wondering in terms of Archistar and the products that and services you provide, would there be any plans to make public, like let's say, historical feature and level surveys? So I just realized that whenever we do a project like that would be $2,000 or $3,000 to engage a land surveyor to conduct a feature and level survey that probably has already been done before a few years ago. I just identified that as the biggest cost, and also like with the plans to make electronic ESD consultant part of the work, I guess, which is a good idea. I'm just wondering if the same ideas would apply to land surveyor feature and level surveys.
If you got I'll give it a crack first. I'm really surprised that the land surveying component is the most expensive part of the early process.
I mean, at the start, I would say like probably cost like $2,000-3,000 to engage one to give you a feature and level survey, and that's like really the beginning of any project. Like you would need a land surveyor.
But it's a really good question too, because in an established area, you obviously have to get your feature level survey to be done.
Right.
And that was part of the thinking about the process here. Why can't the land surveyor, when they do their traditional work, do and submit that digitally and ingest that into the digital twin? So DTV is
totally possible. Yeah.
So I mean, it doesn't happen at the moment. That's part of that cultural change.
Right.
So this is a tool to say, if we did that, as eComply is a tool that encourages it, that question gets asked a lot, and that's great because it needs to be asked and say, why aren't we doing it? Why can't we do it? They're already collecting the data. It's about formatting into the system, and they might do half the house on one side, on both sides in the rear, and yes, it should be loaded up, and then over time, you should be able to stitch all the buildings when you start to redo homes throughout a city. So there's certainly some thinking behind that, but we need to get the land surveyor industry to also move in that direction.
Is there any attempts to maybe talk to them? Just wondering about their reactions and feedback.
From the land surveyors? Initially confrontational.
Okay.
Well, I don't really deal with them, but I mean, like any industry, they kind of push back a little bit.
Right.
But from what I'm hearing in recent times, they are on board. This is their world. This is, to some regards, actually looking at now what can I offer new services in this new world, and they've got a massive part to play.
Yeah, definitely.
Most of them have a business. They want longevity in the business, so they're willing to adopt changes. And it's all about building I'm a sole practitioner.
Okay.
Building relationships with your surveyors.
Yeah.
You're going to them all the time, so they should be reasonable.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think the main issue that you'll find is to digitise these sorts of sets of information. In general, they have to be in similar or the same format.
Oh, definitely.
All the data gets structured in a certain way, and if the data is structured in a certain way, you can kind of say you can filter through that data. In tech, you can filter through that data, and you can make commonalities between different data sets. If all those different data sets are in different formats, it's very, very, very difficult, almost impossible to work on a large scale data set to be able to make those commonalities and to pull out the correct information. So, when we get all the data sets that we have from different governments and different third parties that come in, we often have to restructure that data internally to get it into the right format, to be able to use it, to filter through it, to be able to then do further analytics on that data. So, yes, I think it's 100% possible. I think it's great if we can do it, but in that you have to kind of think who's going to do the work to get it into the right format. In general, we have to have an industry change where they start sending in their information in the right, in a structured format. They can start using that data. For an example, they might have their plans as PDFs. It might not be digitized format. In some cases, it might be completely digitized. Then I'll give you the actual, digital file, the CAD file, the BIM file, whatever they're using. If they're submitting me in hand-drawn PDFs as their final report,
Right.
someone has to go in and digitize that. So it's either is it them doing it, is it us doing it, is it a third party?
Someone has to do it.
Someone has to do it to get it. So it's that's the tricky part of when you get into digitized data. Until you have that digital format, it's very hard to build up that digital twin. However, we're seeing it happen.
Okay.
And that's the way we'll go.
And like HTML, it's set in the protocol, so the whole industry has a responsibility in setting a protocol so that we can start using these tools.
Yep. Thank you for that.
No worries.
I'll just add in, like this journey that's probably already started, and we've got the two, I guess, the private and industry working with the government as well. And I think there is an organisation in Melbourne that's already doing that collectiveness of the surveying data to come through. That any survey you undertake, they own the right to that, but they're slowly expanding that out. But it's, I guess, the whole evolution of where we're heading with all this. There will be a time that will move into this digital twin, and it's about the socialisation of all this data that we're doing and getting that right format and then the language that we're all talking on. And yeah, we're getting there, but it's already happening. Yeah, you just have a look out there. Yep.
And you know what? Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
So of course, the City of Yarra, as an example, they're building a digital model. We're giving them 10, 20 projects. They are building a digital model. I assume they're using a similar format.
And once it gets into that format, it's amazing. Like it's like, you might have, it might just be one person that comes in and says, hey, if you get all this data and get these sort of analytics out of it. All it takes is one person to kind of be like, it changed the whole industry once it gets to that point. So it's super exciting, and I know there's a lot of kind of apprehension. There's a lot of companies as well, individuals kind of going in, hey, my data's out there in the cloud, it's like, get on the thing, who owns my data, that sort of stuff. But once we kind of sort that out, like it kind of like in the industry kind of jumps on board, you'll see very easy changes very quickly.
Everyone will be rewarded.
Yeah,
Access to data, rich data.
yeah. Yeah.
Got another question in the front here.
Question or commentary on the same topic. So there are businesses out there in the surveying field that I've seen overseas that do point cloud-based surveying or data capture. I'm not sure what happens to, or who owns the right to that survey. If you've done it for your own lot, does it then go into a subscription sort of scenario if you need to access it, or does it get uploaded to a public domain like this? And then also, that level of information could also be captured by someone like Google, who are already doing this for their Street View and stuff. So what's the partnerships or expansion of whatever data they may have access to?
Interesting. So, for example, point cloud data. When they create those models, depending on what you own initially. So I guess like when you create those models, like they're your model, you own it. As soon as you start uploading those to things like, for example, AI products, like for example, anything to do with like ChatGPT, watch whatever you put into it, because whatever you put into it, they own that data. So it's a black hole. So like you have to be really careful in terms of like what companies you put what data in. Check their T's and C's, like what they're doing, because in general, anything you put into Google, anything you put into like things like ChatGPT, those sorts of programs, they can just take that IP. So it's a very in tech, it's very kind of standard across. We always tell everyone in our company, don't put any of your code or whatever into these things, because that can happen. However, using these tools to actually generate and create these models using point clouds and everything, it's all your data. It's only when you start using kind of external products that you want to get further information from. There's usually T's and C's and that. For example, we don't we don't take your data, but it's like everything you upload is your own stuff, but you have to be careful. There is that.
Yes, it's a really big question, and the government has to get their head. Well, first the government has to get it around their head about what the world means in a digital context. So the whole ways the contracts are being drafted will need to be reconsidered. The IP is a massive challenge, but ultimately, if your house design, this starts to change the question about if it is a digital twin, it is on a digital twin. Why isn't the owner of the home also the owner of the digital asset as well? So digital assets now have value, and how do we determine value is a very murky game for me, but it does exist. So when you sell and buy a home in the future, you'll be also selling and buying a digital asset as well. And so what does that mean? And this is a bit out there, some of the crazy ideas.
What's the value of the digital asset, I guess, to the individual as well? Like, what do we gain from owning this piece of thing in the...
Well, rather than in 25 years' time, you might need to get a renovation, no one's got your designs, now you have it. So that's one really basic answer. Insurance companies are giving you IoTs related to your house. They want information to see, are you maintaining the route? They might have flow switches in the gutters. So they'll get direct information, they'll give you cheaper premiums. So the really wacky idea is For those who've been in Melbourne for a long time, you would have seen a transition from industrial furniture occurring in cafes around the 1990s, 1980s, 1990s. And the reason why that was occurring was because Melbourne had a whole range of manufacturing plants around Collingwood and North Melbourne that moved out of town, but there was a whole range of industrial furniture that was available. I'm going to bring this back to the digital twin, so don't worry. And so there was this asset that was not being utilised. But because all of a sudden there was a purpose for it, you all of a sudden got these really funky cafes that started to pop up, and there's still bits and pieces of that kind of design that's filtered through some of the cafes in Melbourne. If I have a digital asset already of a BIM format, and I'm a VR expert that wants to build in the metaverse, and you come to me and you've already given me the house design, rather than charge you $15,000, I might just charge you $3,000 and create you a virtual environment. Now it's much more accessible to you because you have a digital asset. And that means that you can speak to your friend that might be travelling in some other part of the world and speak to them in a VR context. You know, the Apples are now delivering their platform. So once we have those assets that were built for a different purpose, we can start to look at other opportunities of what it might mean, how I can utilise that for my own personal benefit. So then increase it. So then all of a sudden, you might have a virtual environment. When you sell your house, you've had the best VR designer in the world. Somebody wants that environment, and that's yours, and now you can sell it with your house. So once you start looking at the possibilities, they start to kind of pop out. And I'm not saying that's going to be, when it's plausible, whether the value is going to be massive, I have no idea, but someone's going to do it.
Yeah, I think it just depends on what you see before. There's no casual answer for that.
Ah, the one, yep.
My question is in relation to the extent of planning that we deal with at the moment. So in Melbourne we have 1 million local councils, and some of them have their own laws, etc. And we're designing our BIM models with some data, but not all the data that I would expect could be analysed. So things like the number of bedrooms to the number of car parks on a site. So in what kind of capacity in the future would this project be able to span all those governments' different rules and all the sites', individual requirements?
So it's all about, for example, in our system, in Archistar, when you select a site, it tells you based on, if you generate a set of building design, it tells you this many apartments with this, for example, 75% of your units are receiving them 2 hours plus sunlight at this time of day. And it shows you which ones are red, which ones are green, and so stuff. You need to change these 5 ones like that. It's data's there now. And
So-
it's
Just the smaller housing.
it's for all different codes.
So in that, are they analysing the BIM data that we input in and giving us pass-fail?
So it's about
Also, it puts in the location and the time of year and calculates all the... The Revit software does a small amount of that as well.
Yeah. So I guess what format would our data need to come in? Like, would it be based on rooms or areas or?
So if you're using something like eComply, what we've shown before, if you're, what program do you use?
Revit.
Yeah, so it pretty much uses spaces, it uses spaces, walls, group separation lines, all that sort of stuff, and then everything else is just parameters. So we have a series of parameters and a standard set that applies. And if you're looking at Revit, if you're looking at Archistar, if you're looking at other ones, you just pretty much need to say, hey, this wall's a fence, this room is a living room, this room is a habitable room, that sort of thing. If you mark off those parameters in each, whatever program you're using, as long as it's in that right format, it will work. And you output that. We currently have, I don't want to go too technical, we currently output it as an IFC file, a generic file that works with a number of different design programs. Yeah, so we're trying to make it as compatible as possible. So you're not just stuck to Revit, but stuck to ArchiCAD and do it in other programs as well. And that's the really tricky part about it. It's you can create all these programs, but if 50% of the people that are using BIM can't use it for things for every single condition on there that we had to test here. So I was being able to sort through that, that was a really tricky part on it.
I just want to, the Smaller Housing Code, eComply, is what the government's developed with Archistar. The ResCode stuff is an Archistar kind of led, and in the future you'd hope that you'd be able to go on any site, wherever you go, and it has the information of what it needs to be supplied. There's no reason why it shouldn't. It's just about making sure that, I don't know how Archistar collects it, they probably mainly collect it and scrape it through the system, but in the future you'd imagine that once the councils will need to supply their information in digital format going forward, and that will then ingest into a digital twin, and then that information will be updated, hopefully, in an instance. So that would be the future. So they found a different way of doing it for the market needs.
I guess the linking into Revit is a thing as well, because every office has a different BIM standard for their parameters.
If you sign up and do my course,
so I mean, do you choose an ISO standard, or like where do you get?
Yeah, that's the thing. Sorry.
Did you mention a BIM guideline as being?
Yes, we have a BIM guideline that's out, and it's realistically, we've rebuilt eComply a number of times, probably about 10 times by now, but we've only really released it to the commercial, to the public this year. So, technically, kind of to everyone, it's a first version really of this, even though we've been developing it for 3 years now. But over time, we'll keep working at it to make it more accessible to everyone. But it is a BIM standard currently. And if you go on there, we've already said if you want to do it in Revit, here's how you do it. If you want to do it in ArchiCAD, here's how you do it. If you just want to use another software and output an IFC, this is what you can see.
So there's a guideline in the platform that you can drop down the right-hand side
Yeah,
of
so
the
in the
guidelines.
platform, there's a little play button on the right, has sample file, has all those guidelines, has sample IFC files, sample Revit files, all the stuff, videos and how to do it. So I really encourage you to just sit down here and play around and have a look at them. If you have any questions, there's anything else support, you can always support.
I found it very intuitive. Once I found the icon, the drop-down menu, and then I said, oh, this makes sense. It's very easy.
We use parameters for certain different other add-ins and softwares.
Yeah.
So we have to be flexible with the way that they're used.
Yeah.
I guess that's my concern.
Well, I found everything, like if I selected a window, after what I said before, sorry. When you select a window, you say, this is a habitable room. If I select a room, not the room tag, we're speaking the Revit talk, the room, I've associated parameters to that and say it's habitable or non-habitable. It's a bathroom, it's a bedroom, it's a lounge room, etc., etc. The outside space, public open space on the area, and then a computated all that.
And the thing is as well, just depending on what you're doing, you don't have to do all the parameters for every single project. If your project doesn't have a patio, doesn't have a outdoor space, you don't have to add that parameter in. So you can make it as simple or as complex as you want to go through it, and that changes according to what code you're assessing against as well. So different parameters for different codes. So it's once you kind of get it in there, once you have those parameters in there once as well. Let's do it the first time. That's the main part of it. And then like if you're just designing a new one, just set out the file and delete the that geometry, then you have it already set up there. So it's every time you do it, it gets quicker and quicker.
No, it sounds good. I just want you guys to be aware of the different ways that industry use Revit. Yeah.
And like it's especially if you jump on board and you have any feedback, please let us know. We have an email as well. We can send it through. It's just a support purely for that product, and please send us any feedback or suggestions, and we'll definitely take it into account.
Thank you.
Very quick. It's very
The
quick.
version 1 always is like we go back and we look at version 5. We're like, what do we do back then? so it's good to see it happening.
All right, I think that was the last question. And I'm Daniel Moore. I'm the State Manager of the Institute. I got stuck terribly in traffic, and that's why I wasn't here at the beginning, so I'm sorry about that. But I just wanted to say thank you so much to Robert from Development Victoria for coming out and speaking to us about eComply, and also for Archistar for coming out and talking about your platform. It's really impressive to see the direction things are going in, and we can see that there's massive, massive opportunities and benefits to speeding up that process. So we're really looking forward to actually working more with you and getting a lot more people involved in this conversation, because I think even in this short question time, there are a lot of ways that we'd love to assist with this and make it more efficient and beneficial for all the architects who are our members. So if everyone would like to help me thank everyone for presenting today, that'd be great. Oh, and also, thank you so much, RMIT, for hosting us as well. Sorry about that. Thank you so much. Yes.